The cell of my life. Today we're hosting the third Vinarchy In The UK webinar, and we're connecting leading producers of the UK with wine professionals all around the globe. So this evening we're going to try the Henners Brut together, which has been delivered to the panel members courtesy of Guest Wine Newcastle. And we also address the following subject: COOL BRITANNIA, the identity of brand UK in the global context. So welcome guys, thanks for joining in this panel tonight. We start with Nigel Wilkinson. He's representing Henners tonight. Welcome.
Thank you Zelda.
You're welcome. And next guest is Fred Dex. He's a master sommelier. Right now he's one of the leading wine consultants and wine education experts of the US. Welcome. And our Martynas Pravilonis, sommelier by heart, certified sommelier, and he has a WSET diploma. And I think you want to be master sommelier very soon, or not?
Let's hope. Nice.
Thank you. So Nigel, we start off with a little presentation of Henners, right?
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Zelda. So what I thought we would do to start is just do a very sort of quick sort of geography on where Henners is, what we're about. So in terms of Henners, Henners is very much a small-scale boutique producer making quality English sparkling. So I'm just going to share the screen with you, and hopefully this will come on. There we go, fantastic. So I'm even going to put my glasses on to make sure I can see properly.
Yeah, sure.
Firstly, where are we? Ooh. Well, if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see the counties there of England, and you'll see East Sussex, and you'll see the sort of, dare I say, the capital town of East Sussex, which is Lewes. So we're quite close to Lewes. Zooming in a bit closer, just to give you an idea. So as you can see there, we are 4 miles from the English Channel, so just 4 miles from the sea. The vineyard sits at 50.89 latitude. So going back to this sort of idea that sort of vines don't grow anything north of 50, well, we of course know that that's not true anymore. It's probably about sort of 53, 54 at a push. We are, in terms of the direct link, we are 124 miles, 200 kilometers from Reims, so Reims in the Champagne district, and we are 55 miles from central London. So there's the vineyard. As you can see, the proximity to the sea. So we are quite literally 4 miles from the sea, and I'm going to show you some pictures in a second where we can just about see the sea from our vineyards. So this is looking up to our vineyard. In terms of the vineyard, as you can see there, 7.1 acres, so we are tiny, very, very small. In terms of the soil composition, it's actually mostly sort of this sort of sandstony clay with some of the chalk deposits. So in terms of the chalk deposits, as you've probably heard from some of the previous webinars here on Vinarchy, the producers like to talk about the chalk composition, because the chalk is, of course, the same chalk bed that extends through the White Cliffs of Dover, through northern France into Champagne. So we do have the similar sort of chalk structure. With regards to our vineyard is planted with 40% Chardonnay, 38% Pinot Noir, and 22% Pinot Meunier. The reason why we only use the Champagne grape varieties is because we see English sparkling wine in the future concentrating on these the classic Champagne varieties. And again, I know I'm talking to the educated, but sort of it's always that idea that Chardonnay brings a lot of elegance, Pinot Noir will bring sort of backbone and structure, and then Pinot Meunier will just add fruit to the final composition. So in terms of the vineyard was planted in 2005. The first wine that was made there was 2007. And at the time in 2005, the gentleman that owned the estate was a gentleman called Larry Waugh. Larry was an engineer, still is an engineer, very successful engineer, particularly with racing cars. And he started the vineyard as a bit of a hobby to start off with, but the reality was that sort of his engineering business was always his #1 priority. And so 10 years after establishing the vineyard in 2017, he sold it to Boutonneau, the company that I work for. And Boutonneau, we are wine producers around the world. You know, sort of we have an estate in South Africa. We have 2 properties in France. We have a project in northern Italy, in Piemonte. So for us, the idea of having an English property was just the most common thing that we wanted to do. Mm. And when the owners of Boutonneau invested into Henners, they could see the potential of this tiny boutique vineyard making absolute quality wines. So in 2018, we invested heavily into the winery. Our senior winemaker, Eric Molenaar, is a Frenchman who originally trained in the Champagne area. He is now our sort of winemaking consultant for all of the group. And he initialized things within the winery to make sure that the winery was producing the best wine that it could. Wow. We have 3 employees at the vineyard full time. We have a senior winemaker. We have 2 people working in the vineyard as well. So in terms of the investment, we built a new tank room. We invested in some more oak barrels. We bought a new press. So we are now also working with an additional vineyard to get more fruit into Henners. So the vineyard that we work with doesn't have a winery, so we process their wines for them. So Colette, our winemaker at Henners, she is able to sort of play around with fruit from 2 vineyard sites. So what do we do that a lot of other people are doing, and things that makes us a bit different? Well, I know it's quite sort of key, and a lot of sort of trendy people say, but we do very little in the vineyard. We try and be as sustainable as we can. We follow this sort of minimum approach to the winemaking. Everything's hand harvested. We do whole bunch, as it says there. The sulfur is kept to an absolute minimum. We actually use inoculated yeasts, but the yeast that Colette uses is yeasts brought from Champagne. We do allow the wines to have malolactic fermentation. The reason why we allow the wines to have malolactic fermentation is to just take away that edge and just to add that creaminess, that complexity into the wine. We have invested with regards to sort of Jura pallets within the winery, and for some of the cuvées we still do some hand riddling, as it says there. And in terms of that figure there of 50,000 bottles, that is under the Henners label, plus also in addition to another label from the other vineyard. Okay, so that 50,000 is not solely Henners. We'll see, you know, the wine that we're drinking tonight, we only produce 8,000 bottles of the Brut, but we are doing things in the winery with regards to making sparkling and still wines. Another producer. So that was the 2017 vintage. The reason why I showed this particular slide, 2017 isn't regarded as a fantastic vintage in England. but if you look at the quality of the Chardonnay grapes there, they are in absolute perfect condition. So, so we're really proud. Now, in terms of the view, so one of the first slides we saw was sort of the looking up to the vineyard. This is now looking down towards the sea in the top left-hand corner. So if you've got your glasses on, you might be able to see the sea literally just in the background there. In terms of the elevation, at its highest point, we're about sort of 35, 40 meters. With regards to sort of, you know, sort of quality wine production, a lot of people sort of will tell you about high elevation because they're trying to get sort of coolness into their grapes. For us, it's a little bit different in the fact that we want to be closer to the sea, because the reality is we are, of course, in England. So, so there we go. And that's all I can tell you about Henners. So in terms of Henners, we are, as I said before, we're a quality wine producer. We have been established now for, well, 15 years. The vineyards have been there for 15 years. The vineyards are getting older and producing better quality grapes. The investment that we've made in the winery in 2017, 2018 is starting to show fruition. It's not in fruition in the terms of the wines that we see at the moment, because we do this extended sort of lees aging. But in 1-2 years' time, what you'll see is some absolutely fantastic quality sparkling wine coming out of Henners. So,
great, thanks. Wow. Okay. Thanks for this bright presentation. It seems like Henners made a really great leap towards greater success, better production materials, more and better fruits. So that's really exciting. Let's taste the wine we're about to how do you say it? Let's just taste the wine. Is everybody ready with their glass and their wine?
We have it.
So Nigel, you told me that the vineyard is really producing sustainable wine.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the production of this sparkling wine?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of what we're doing in the vineyard,
maybe you can switch your screen back to normal.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, can I keep on this for the moment while we talk?
Sure.
Yeah. So in terms of the what we're doing in the vineyards, we try to give the vines as much love as we can. We are not organic. We certainly won't be organic, for the fact that if on the odd occasion that we need to spray, we will spray. Okay, because we're so small. If we had a fungal infection in the vineyard, it could easily sort of devastate the vineyard for that particular vintage. So for us, that would be extremely bad news. So we're not organic, but we are sustainable in the fact that we will use chemicals, but only if we absolutely need to. Everything is done in terms of hand harvest. So we've got, as I said before, we've got 3 people employed at Henners, so Colette, who's the winemaker. Then we have a gentleman called Colm, who is the viticulturist, and then Colm's assistant, Jose. And literally between the 3 of them, they look after this 7.1 acre site and make sure it's on top form.
Great. Okay.
And being so close to the sea, does it pose any problems, like more problems than if you would were somewhere more inland regarding humidity?
For us, humidity isn't an issue, fortunately. we only sort of see sort of any sort of humidity sort of late spring and late spring, sort of late autumn. The temperature where we are is relatively stable. We're in a little pocket where, again, you couldn't see from the slides, but we're sheltered from the wind. We look out to the sea, but the sea doesn't really have much of an influence on where we're at.
Okay, well, I was there last year. So for me, the influence, I don't know, at least sometimes maybe you can feel in the wines, was that when you get out of the car, you straight away you feel the sea. I remember the smell. It was like oyster shells, like oyster farm not far away, and sometimes you can have these associations in the wines.
Dus maybe ook the saltiness of the soil gives the wine that acidic minerals like you do in the champagne. Yeah.
So in terms of the Brut, as you can see on the screen there, this particular cuvee that we're drinking now, only 8,000 bottles were produced. This is essentially based on the 2014 vintage. So this is just over 90% 2014 vintage, with reserve wines from 2012 and 2010. It was kept on the lees for 48 months just to develop that sort of autolytic note, that lovely sort of yeasty character that the wine has. It was, as you can see there, it was disgorged at the end of May last year, and we keep it in the cellar for approximately 8-9 months before it's released, just to let it sort of stabilize a little. And this particular cuvee was released in February.
Okay.
So, shall I take the screen off now, Zelda?
Oh yeah, that's okay. Sorry.
Yeah, I have a question for everybody. This is so I talked to a lot of consumers, and I'm trying to break more into the consumer world. And I get asked a very set kind of questions. And number one, what glass is everyone drinking out of? Nigel, especially you, what is the optimum glass? Because here in the States, it's, you know, the average consumer, 95% of the consumers are still wanting to drink out of a flute. Now, as a somm, master somm and service, we try to bend rules here and there and try to suggest new things. I have 2 glasses I'm tasting this out of, and I'll tell you what they are. Because I have the Riedel, this is the Riedel champagne Vinum glass, very thin, very thin. I only use it for sparkling wine. And anytime I drink sparkling wine champagne, I always try to use a different glass to see if it'll beat it, right? Because and the second, I have a bunch of other glass, but the second glass is the Jancis Robinson. Have you guys seen this with the Richard Brendan collaboration? So I think this is like an optimum, like this you could take, this is like a Porsche you could take on any track and go, you know, white wine, red wine, rosé, sparkling wine, big red, Napa cabs. But just curious what all of you guys have, what stem you're using. Is anyone using a flute? Or are we all using more bulbous type glassware?
Well, I think the Zier glass, it's a really bold one.
What's it called?
Zier. It's a German.
ZYR?
ZEAHAR. It's a German glass producer.
Oh, cool.
I talked to him last week, and he told me that this glass keeps the sparkles, but also the aromas of a classic sparkling wine in the glass. So
interesting.
You taste the fruit aromas better. So it stays in the glass. So if you take the flutes, it goes straight ahead. And then
that's like the complete opposite. You're like, the wine's horizontal, not vertical in that glass.
Yeah.
Nigel, what do you think about that? Does that look like sacrilege to you, like to have the big burgundy? No. So have you done different tastings? Have you done different tastings with different glasses and seen better performance?
We do, and you know, sort of sort of doing a mini experiment with that now. In terms of glassware, I think the reality is whatever people feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
I totally appreciate and totally understand the science involved that sort of the glass will change what the wine tastes. The reality is that most people don't have an array of different glasses.
Yeah.
So I was originally tasting ISO, and I've now actually put the Henners in a Burgundy glass, and the difference is huge.
Yeah.
I think, you know, sort of with a wine of this quality, what you get with Henners, because it's been on lease for 48 months, that autolytic note, that yeastiness, certainly does come through. In terms of this particular wine, as I say, no mallow, so you get this lovely green apple character. But then if you break it down, you know, sort of the Pinot note in here, I think, you know, sort of there is structure there. There's definitely some sort of Chardonnay component with regards to the elegance and the finesse. And then that little Pinot Meunier component is just marrying the two together and giving wine lots of fruit.
Yes.
What are your thoughts, Martynas?
Well, I'm using the same glass as Fred, Veritas glass from Riedel. We started with them straight away when we opened our wine boutique in hotel, and for me it's probably one of the best glasses for sparkling wines and champagne. I really love it. It keeps moves well, but also opens up the aromas nicely. With big glasses, I sometimes find that it can release CO2 too fast, and you get flat wine in pretty short time. So this I find pretty optimal, and what I'm happy about that lately, I don't know, maybe 2 years, more and more guests are being aware of these kind of glasses. Maybe it's because from last year also Riedel has stopped producing flutes, at least at restaurant level, and doing just these tulip shaped glasses, and most of fine wine and fine dining, and not only fine dining, but most of the restaurants are working now with Riedel glasses, at least in our capital city. In bigger cities, we have good distributors, and more people are seeing them instead of flutes in the restaurant. So I get less and less surprised faces when I pour champagne to this kind of glasses, and that's fine. I'm very happy about it.
Where are you located?
Vilnius, Lithuania. Vilnius,
Okay.
a small Baltic state with
Cool.
a half a million population city, but yeah, we are growing pretty fast in terms of wine understanding.
Martynas, are you serving this kind of wine in your restaurant as well? Have you ever tasted such a sparkling wine before?
Yeah. I was one of the first to jump into Henners when it appeared. It's truly Henners was the first English sparkling wine to appear in our country.
Wow, cool.
And I was like, I read a lot about English sparkling wines, how good they are and how they beat champagne, but then really tasted just a couple of them before. And then one of our suppliers, he said, no, I'm thinking about importing it.
Oh, wow.
And asked my opinion, what I'm thinking, asked others.
Yeah.
Most of the sommelier community were pretty enthusiastic, and that's how it appeared like 2 years ago or so. And it performs very well in competitions, in our local competitions. And, I think maybe when it appeared, it was a big surprise for many people. Now, at least the majority of frequent restaurant visitors, they are already know, at least 50%, I would say, they know already the brand, or at least that we have an English sparkling wine which is of high quality.
Do you think people are fed up with typical champagnes, that they want to try something else?
That's a tricky question. I would say maybe 3-4 years ago, we've seen a really big boom in champagne, in sparkling wine in general. Like really, it exploded. It was like only big brands dominating the market, and now we have a huge array of small grower producers coming up, Franciacorta's appearing as well. But I think still other sparkling wines, like quality sparkling wines, like Franciacorta, English sparkling wines, they're still a bit in a difficult positions in our market because being of very high quality, the prices are as well quite near to the champagne.
Yeah.
And people here, they tend to either they choose Prosecco or they go for champagne. And this middle ground is still a bit unclear.
Okay.
I think this is the biggest challenge for quality wine producers from other regions, how to tackle this.
Yeah, that's well, we discuss this tonight because how is the UK in the global context? Yeah.
Yeah,
So, what do you think?
But I think that
Yeah.
I know there were these couple of big stories where English sparkling wine and wine tastings outperformed champagne and other wines. I think last year and a couple of years ago. And this, at least for sommeliers as me, it gives a very good sales point. And you know, it's this kind of cherry which you throw it at your guest, and straight away he gets, you know, oh really? And then you can, you know, start trying to sell it, and mostly people get like really surprised in a good way. Later on I would like to ask Nigel about, you know, overall, do you think that British or English wine, not generally sparkling, but let's talk about sparkling, do you think it starts to have its own face, its own, I don't know, style or identity, which could separate it from let's say champagne? Because many people would compare it. And it's nice, you have the same grape varieties. We used to say it has very similar climate and soil. But you know, how long can you go on this? You have to have something, your own story and your own face to show. So what that would be, you know?
I think, you know, to answer that question, I think sort of going back 25, 30 years ago, English wine was often still looked at as a bit of a gimmick. It was looked at sort of as something that would never go anywhere. But I think there's been this absolute revolution with regards to vineyards that have sprung up, investment that is taking place, and please don't think that sort of this is a gimmick. This is here to stay. And not just Henners, there are lots and lots of fantastic producers now in England. I could rattle off 20 producers that I think make absolutely amazing sparkling wine. And going back to your point with regards to the price, I think, you know, sort of, because this is all relatively new, there is obviously setup costs that have to be sort of paid for initially. And I think sort of, you know, the reality is that banks do want their money back sooner rather than later. But I honestly think that in terms of the pricing, the pricing will stabilize, and I can't see sort of English sparkling wine jumping up, certainly in the current climate, considerably in terms of its price point. I think the price point will remain stable, certainly for the next few years, where other markets and other markets' wines may have to increase their pricing. So, you know, sort of, it goes back to sort of, you know, sort of what I was saying originally in the fact that Henners, like a lot of other producers, it's, you know, sort of, as I say, that there are lots and lots of producers out there that are focused on quality. And yes, I'm not going to sort of sit here and say that the price is cheap. It's not cheap, but I think it does represent good value in terms of the price point that it's at. And if you compared this to a champagne at this price point, and if you put it in a blind tasting, I'd be really confident that this particular cuvee that we're drinking now would certainly stand up. You know, sort of, I'm not going to name Grand Marques or sort of other sort of champagne houses, but we've done exercises where we pop the wine into blind tastings, and consistently it's always been up there in terms of the quality. And then when it's revealed, it's for us, it's something we're super proud of. And I think sort of in terms of Henners, as I say, sort of, you know, sort of, we don't see sort of Henners as just sort of, you know, sort of a way of jumping a bandwagon. We really do passionately want to make absolutely fantastic wines at this estate. And I said before, you know, sort of, I honestly think that this wine that we're drinking tonight is good in 2 years' time, when the investment that we put in 2017, 2018 starts to come through, and we start to see the work, and the vines are just that little bit older as well. Yeah. And you know, we will in a few years' time we'll have more reserve wines as well. So when we are creating sort of a non-vintage cuvee, we can certainly have consistency. And yeah, it's something we're really, really excited about. We do believe we're making great wines now, but in a few years' time, we're going to be making exceptional wines.
Great.
What are your thoughts on the cuvee that we're drinking?
You know, I have tasted this exact wine 2 years ago, and then last year during the visit at Henners, and now, and at least when I was in the winery last year and then tasting now, it's already, you can see a very big difference between what was a couple of years ago and what you find now. I think the sugar level, residual sugar level is lower, right? And
it is slightly lower, yes, yeah.
The balance, what I was surprised initially about Henners was that the acidity seems very ripe and very pleasant. What I found in other English sparkling wines, maybe some time ago, that you could distinguish them blindly very easily because of this sharp acidity. You know, it was like really very sharp lemony acidity, almost like sometimes like vitamin C. And here you don't have this kind of feeling. It's just a very mouth-watering, very nice, really well-balanced wine.
Thank you.
And you can feel this, I don't know, as Zelda told, it's for me, it's this salty mineral touch on the palate, which takes me straight away to the seaside, you know. So I really love it.
Yeah.
How about you, Fred?
Well, you know, I like the combination of power and finesse. I think you've done a good job there. Again, I've tasted out of a couple. I brought a new glass to the fold just because it's fun for me. You know, what else are we doing in quarantine? you try all these wines out and see which glassware performs different. And yeah, not everybody has these glasses, but you know, it's different because they all did a different thing texturally. And that's what I like, the versatility of the texture. I like the mix. I've never had Henners, so you got a new, I'm totally unbiased. So I have no bias. I don't have an opinion either way, so that's good. I've tried a number of English sparkling wines, mostly at trade shows. You know, Gusborne, Night Timber, Haddingley, Camel. You know, I've tried the ones that, you know, are up in the echelon, and I really like this style you've created here, where there is some muscle. You know, there is some textural expanse, and then you also get that acidity. I think. Your name again? I can't see your name on the screen.
It's
Martynas. Sorry. So Martin, what Martin was saying is that, you know, maybe 5 years ago the wines were sharper. This is pretty complete to me. Could I put this on a, you know, then the question for me is, do I, you know, if I'm a consultant, as I do consulting, maybe when this ends, I'll do some consulting on wine lists. But when I'm recommending a wine like this to a guest, or putting it on a wine list for a client, or in my own spot, can I go, you know, it's one of those things, it's, can I take this? You have to ultimately go up against champagne, you know, unless the person is English, has an association to the brand, knows, has traveled to London and maybe had it at a Michelin star restaurant in London. And you guys are in a price point that's fairly reasonable. You know what I mean? I think what you said, Nigel, you know, values in the eye of the beholder. You know, a guy with a black card that wants to spend $500 on Burgundy, his perception of value is a lot different than someone that's out on date night that, you know, is looking to get every penny's worth of their meal, and maybe Prosecco or Cava is that path. You know, and every restaurant has opportunities. Every, you know, hotel has opportunities. But I think this is a solid. To me, this is solid. It's like you check all the boxes. You know what I mean? Acidity, autolytic, textural. Again, I tasted out of a couple different glasses to put it through the paces to see what it does. And this wine's got over a minute long finish. You know what I mean? And also with the different glassware I've played with, the acidity's been sharper. But the one thing that I'm about is the textural length. And am I chewing on the wine? Is there substance to the wine? Which means the material was good. The grape material was good. The vineyard source was good, especially when you get fresh acidity. You know that you're getting a good material source. It was clean. Nothing was poking out as far as like, you know, any strange flavors. I think 48 months on paper looks like a long time, but at the same time, I think it gave it that expanse and weight that I think an American audience that drinks, and I dare say any of the big mark names, but, you know, someone who wants a Laurent Perrier or Veuve, or, you know, a wine that's their kind of, you know, entry, that's their number one wine. This is where you're at price wise. You know, you're at that, you know, at that price point, the Rotorua price point, the, you know, just the non-vintage wine. You're, you know, in the price point of this, right? You're at like 50 US.
No, actually we're not. We're in terms of the US market. Obviously, different states have different taxes, etc. But we're not at the Vivico or Rotorua price point. Obviously, other Grand Marque champagnes are available, but we would be cheaper than most Grand Marques. We're at the same sort of price point as Grower champagne.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay, you know, that runs the gamut here in the U.S. because you have the Gimenez and the Igliories of the world and those. I'm thinking from a purely, you know, consumer, I know nothing. I drink Veuve Clicquot. I know these 5 or 6 brands versus the customer that, you know, knows in the U.S. Terry Thies is the is kind of the shepherd of, and Skurnik's a company here that works with, you know, Pierre Peters and Jiminy and a lot of those marks. And as a restaurant guy, I'd have no issue putting this on the list with Bubbles and say, hey, you want to try something really good? You know, this ticks all the boxes for me. It's, you know, it's exciting. It's not quite where some of the others. You're less expensive than Gus Burn. You're less expensive than,
we are, yes, yeah,
and Nye Timber, and so yeah. I was basing, so I do base things on price, and you know what? That's, you know, I work for the owner, I work for the customer, I work for the value of what they're getting, not just the storytelling of this new cool wine. But I'm excited from what I'm tasting. The quality is spot on.
Thank you
I'm
very
going to
much.
tell a guest 8,000 bottles produced. Is that what I read?
That's right, yes.
That's
yes. So
nothing. It's 7.
For this particular cuvee that we're drinking, it's 8,000. We do produce other cuvées. We do make some still wines as well.
Yeah.
But this particular release, this was 8,000 bottles. And this was based, as I say, most of this is actually based on the 2014 vintage. 2014 was an average vintage for us. So I think in 2022, 2023, when we're releasing 2018 based wines, it's honestly, that for me is just going to be absolutely fantastic.
Wasn't 18 a warmer, a warmer vintage, and it had it bumped up your crop up?
It did. So we had a good yield in 2018. The quality was absolutely fantastic. But, you know, sort of going back to sort of our sort of philosophy with Henners, our owners, Michael, they're not here just to sort of make a quick buck. They want Henners to be positioned in the right places and enjoyed by anyone that wants to enjoy it. And, you know, for us, this isn't sort of, as I say, this isn't a short-term thing. This in 2-3 years time is when it's going to get really exciting. It's exciting now, don't get me wrong. I'm super excited to go around the world and talk about Henners like a lot of our other brands. But I think in 2 or 3 years time, this, you know, this particular cuvee that we're looking at now will be, you know, it will be very, very exciting.
Very good. And Nigel, are you going global with Henners, or is this just the start phase?
No, so we are global. So Martynas is a customer in Lithuania, as an example. In the last sort of 12 months or so, I've shown Henners in Hong Kong. I've shown Henners in Japan. We do have a couple of stockists in the US. So we do particularly well in Kentucky, of all places. We do very well in Scandinavia as well on the Henners wines. But with 8,000 bottles, it's not a lot to play with.
You have to make choices as well.
Yeah, well, for us, I think, again, going back to sort of Dennis and Michael's sort of philosophy for Henners, is that we're not going to sell this, you know, in one hit to a big supermarket, because we're building a brand. Mm-hmm. We want to sort of show this wine to people that have some knowledge and have passion and maybe appreciate what we're trying to do. So it is literally a case of, you know, sort of certain countries have allocations, and yeah, once it's gone. And then, you know, we as I say, we do make other cuvées as well. We make a vintage, we make a sort of a top cuvée called Native Grace. We make a rosé, we make some still wines. So we're trying to manage it. We're trying to sort of we're trying to do the right thing, and you know, for our sort of loyal customers, so people like Martynas, who's supported this brand for a number of years now, we will always do our best to ensure that the wine is available for these people.
People, wow.
So
And
if it was,
yeah. Oh, sorry. You're also expanding, right? You said you wanted to buy another piece of vineyard.
so we're working with another vineyard. At this moment in time, we are making the wine for the other vineyard. Remember that Henners is an estate wine. So we do have the option to plant close to the winery. So that will be incorporated into the estate. But remember, we're talking sparkling wine here, so when you know, and quality sparkling wine. So we're not going to see the results for another 10 years, maybe. It's not a quick fix, unfortunately.
Yeah, it has to grow. Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, sorry if you already answered the question, because I had a short issue with the sound, but I would like to come back to the question regarding the style of English wine and then the English sparkling wine. So do you have in Henners, and maybe you have already an idea overall for England, where does the style of wine is heading to? You know, are you trying? You already answered probably that you're not trying to emulate Champagne or be another Champagne region. So is there kind of already idea what would be, you know, like archetype of English sparkling wine, and where are you going?
Okay, so firstly, I'll answer that question in two parts. So firstly, to talk about English sparkling wine in general. So you mentioned before about acidity. I think the reality is, because we are a cool climate, we will always have acidity in our wines. Whether that's wine produced in Kent, in Sussex, in Hampshire, in Cornwall, Devon, wherever along that south coast, there will always be fresh, crisp acidity in the wines. In terms of the varieties that we're using, the vast majority of people now are using the classic Champagne varieties throughout England. So Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier is the third grade. You know, 10, 15 years ago, the most planted grape variety in the UK was Seyval Blanc. And Seyval Blanc is a hybrid, and people have literally just they're ripping up that Seyval Blanc, that they are getting rid of other crossings and hybrids that were very common, and focusing on the Champagne varieties and choosing the right clones to be successful from wherever they grow. So if you look at the flavor profiles of the three different grapes, the high acidity because of the climate, that for us would be a way of describing English wines in general. For Henners, what Eric and Colette want to achieve in Henners is fineness, is quality. Already in this wine, we can start to taste. I can taste Eric's passion and Colette's idea of what they want to achieve with this wine, and I do think this wine has structure, that it has depth, and it's just one of those wines that always puts a smile on my face. I think it's really, really drinkable. I never ever get bored of drinking this. I think there are some sparkling wines that you can have about 2 or 3 glasses and take it or leave it. But I just know for sure that this bottle is going to be absolutely smashed within the next hour or so, because I'm just going to totally enjoy it.
Yeah, great. So I think UK winemakers are trying to find their own style and represent that to the world, I guess. Martynas, how do you represent UK winemakers? Because they're fairly new to a lot of people, I guess.
So, you know, this kind of novelty is part of thing which attracts, for example, me, and I think many young sommeliers especially, is always we get excited when you have something, you know, let's say obscure or new, and if it's high quality, so you want to tell it to the world. And English wine was, I think, and is something like that. And not many people have tasted it, but you know that it's good quality and you are pretty sure about it. So you want to show it to others. So of course, always, I don't know how about in United States for Fred,
Yeah.
but in Lithuania we have this thing with acidity that very often when a guest comes to, let's say, a shop or a restaurant and you ask, what would you like to drink or what may I recommend to you? So very often the answer is something which is not acidic. So acidity is perceived slightly like a negative aspect of wine. So that's why with Henners and maybe some other cool climate region wines, we have to be a bit more cautious. So you try to ask a guest, you know, what do you like, and if he answers, you know, Chablis, Riesling, or things like that, so then you can, you know, be sure and recommend it. And these people, like, they really love it. And I find it very good, you know, substitute to let's say the same champagne with oysters and all the seafood. It works very nicely. And yeah, as I say, I really love it. So I've included some other. We have now another one producer from United Kingdom, and it's getting more and more. I think it has a future. Maybe it will be for some time still small as a niche product, but I think it already sits very comfortably at like top high quality sparkling wine shelf.
Thank you.
That's a good sign, yeah. Fred, do you want to give your point of view about this?
Well, you know, it's interesting. It's funny listening to Martynas about Lithuania, because it seems you might even be further ahead than the United States, because there's just so much wine here. I remember the last time that so I think Valkyrie is the importer of, is it Nijtimber, right? Nijtimber, Haddingley?
Nijtimber, yeah.
And I remember tasting the Nijtimber wines. I was like, holy, these wines are pretty darn good. Because I just kind of walked into the tasting and like grabbed a glass, said hello to someone. This happens in tastings in New York, you know, the big trade tastings where there's like 100 tables, you know, you walk in the room, it's exciting. The first table is like, and I taste wine, like, what is this? Like English sparkling wine. I'm like, man, what? And so, you know, I think the excitement of tasting is there. I think the excitement from the people who are on the other end of selling it and the people that are on the front lines, maybe people that work for Bottineau or something like this, that are the national sales directors, or the people that are on the road. In the United States, it's a big country. So you got to have the support systems to go to these different trade shows in New York, Chicago, San Francisco, LA, and you got to get the buy-in of young sommeliers, right? I mean, Martynas probably knows this. You said it, the young sommelier that gets excited, that's willing to put the wine on the list and go out and espouse and talk about it is really what's necessary. You know, I think you guys are young. The wines are still, you know, and I know about labor costs, land costs, farming costs, to do what you guys are doing with yields, to do what you're doing with a small team. and getting this quality, it costs money to do this. I do think there needs to probably at some point need to be a BTG type thing, where, you know what I mean, BTG, by the glass, where that's where you're going to start to get more eyeballs on it, and it doesn't have to devalue what you guys do or all the more expensive stuff. And that's a slippery slope, right? As a brand, you're kind of, English wine as a brand, English sparkling wine as a brand's kind of, yeah, they're great. They taste kind of like champagne. They have the acidity, but they're expensive, right? That's right now. And then there are a few of the champions that say, well, I don't care because before COVID, I'm in a restaurant that I have guests that can support that. I could pull this wine out as a first course on a 5-course meal, and it's part of the tasting menu. I can, there's ways to get people, to pay attention without slamming a $150 bottle of wine down their throat. You know what I mean? So without the sommelier saying, "Oh, I really love this. You should try this now," because that does happen, right? Like this, we get excited. I'm too old for that shit. So sorry. That ship ran 15 years ago, because I realized there's a certain point where the dialogue is there. Like Martynas, you were also saying, like, you got to listen to the words of the guests, and if they're looking at sparkling wine, and you go over like, "Hey, what do you drink?" "Well, I drink this and that." Like, "Hey, man, have you ever had English sparkling wine? Here's the price point. I think it's pretty awesome." And and you're just have to build the brand, the English sparkling wine brand loyalty up. I think this is an incredible wine for me to start with, because but then you're also going to face distribution issues, market issues, and who sells it, being in stock, what states you're in, what brokers you use, and all that mishigas. On the other part of it, yeah, we get excited. We're like, yeah, this is great. But at the same time, who sells it? How do I buy it? How do I get it to people? 8,000 bottles isn't a lot. I think what do you guys produce? 15 million bottles total? Something like this, somewhere. As England, as a country, that's not a lot of bottles. 1 million cases a year. So I think you'll have to overcome some of those issues, as well as not the price, but where do I get it? How do I get it? Who do I buy it from? What restaurant has this? And especially now, who online is selling this? What neighborhood store has this? So I think that's your next. You really got to invest. And my team, Master Shaker, we're really trying to figure out how to help importers get back to buyers, get back to the consumer, and get that messaging. So that's a huge thing in general, because you can draw up all the excitement in the world. I was talking to what's the guy's name? Tyler Stelzer is the guy. He's a sparkling wine expert.
Yeah. I know Tyler. Yeah.
So he's great. I mean, he's a great ambassador to sparkling wine, right?
Yeah, sparkling wine.
So I saw him at an event, and I'm sorry if I take a lot of time, but I saw him at an event for Tasmania, and he was tasked with, putting together this tasting of Tasmanian wines, maybe 20, 30 producers. A lot of them didn't have importers, some like Jantz does. I'm sure you know Jantz. Really good wines. And, I was just talking to him. It's getting importers buy-in, getting into the right distribution, having you come and do a special thing, and getting those 12 great restaurants, 15 great restaurants in New York City when this comes back, your wines, the Henners on those wine lists. And that's really where I think, it's like a domino effect. Once a COOL Som puts it on the list and it's in, but also right now in the United States, we didn't talk about this, but pet nat wines are really popular. Natural wines are really popular. So you were talking about Prosecco, Martynas, in like French Corta. What's really popular in the U.S. that I'm seeing is the glue sparkling pet nat, like these $20 goofy sparkling wines, and people are going after them. And now you're not only competing with champagne, you're competing in French Cortas, trying to spend money and fight. They have Ferrari, don't they? They have Ferrari money. So you're in a pretty crowded field, and people in a time like now, they're drinking the crap out of Prosecco. They're buying caseloads of the cheapest Prosecco they can buy and just, but no, I mean, that's just my take on it. But as far as the quality, Nigel, I knew what to expect, but I didn't expect it to be this complete. And again, I'm looking at that. I'm looking at the wine in a lot of different directions, textural, flavor-wise. As this is warmed up, it's held the acidity. And I haven't put this back on ice. 3 different glasses. I'll probably put it back in the fridge, let it chill out for a little bit, and then I'm gonna figure out dinner. Like, what could I do? And it's not gonna be oysters. It's not gonna be the classic stuff. I'm gonna try to put this with some Thai food or sushi or something a little more progressive.
Experiment.
Yeah, or just a little more progressive with a little spice or a little, like ginger or something. Because I think this wine would do well in that environment.
One thing I would say, Fred, sorry to interrupt, is
you're good.
Sort of the, from my own experiments, the sort of with this, yes, it won't be sort of as vibrant in terms of the fizz in a few hours' time, but what still comes through is the quality, in the fact that if the quality's there, it'll be there for a long, long time. And please do that. Stick it back in the fridge, taste it in a couple of hours' time, and I promise you it's not going to disappoint. And for many people, many people, they can't sort of drink a whole bottle all at once. And I'm not saying that this will last for days. It won't. But a couple of hours, it'll maintain the this structure that it has, the depth that it has. It's good winemaking. So it's if you taste a good quality champagne after a few hours in a glass, it'll obviously the sparkle won't be there, but it'll still be very, very good. And this is what we want to achieve. This is what sort of, Eric and Colette, they want to have with regards to Henners.
Yeah.
And then you can see how it develops in the glass now, coming back to it. There's some cacao, chocolatey notes appearing on the nose, as well as the ginger, as Fred said about the food. You can get it in the glass as well. And coming back to how you could promote the wine, I think you will never be a big operation, maybe in the far future, but what you have right now. So I think the best way is to build a loyal ambassador group of people. And as Fred said, I think the most important is to get the wines by the glass. That's how you can reach the biggest crowd of consumers, of guests. Because even sometimes I do this for our boutique. We get, let's say, a wine, just 3 bottles or 6 bottles. So you have an option. There is always a collector which you can send an email, and he will buy this full case. But then this wine will be gone. And I did this couple of times, and then I got really disappointed with myself, because then you have to wait for a location for next year. Of course, it's good, it's money back, but for producer and even for your own business, it's a opportunity gone. So sometimes it's nicer, to get this 1 bottle and start pouring it with Coravin or just by the glass, and then instead of 1 guy, maybe 10 people will taste it, and they will spread the word. So I think that this by the glass scheme is it also what helped me to promote Henners, to show Henners to other people as well, because when you're offering, as Fred said, okay, it will be not 150 euros in our restaurant, even though we are a luxury hotel. It will be, let's say, 90, maybe 100 euros with good margin. But to sell a bottle of English sparkling wine, you know, even for this price, you have to convince a person. But when you have a glass for, let's say, 14 euros, or 12 euros, or 14, even 15 euros, it's much easier, you know, and then you can get the same person having second glass, third, or he may ask a bottle.
Exactly, that's
So this is the best way how to get into the market.
So for the global UK market, you have to have your ambassadors, like Fred said. You have to think smart about how to present your wine, like.
I know, you know, especially if we still have time, you know, in countries like ours, we have a very strict alcohol advertisement laws nowadays. We cannot put any advertisements even online, you know. Facebook is blocking your page if you buy advertisement as a company and trying to advertise. Let's say we are doing Henners tasting. The algorithm of Facebook finds a name, Henners sparkling wine, and it blocks straight away. So so then we start as a sommeliers and businesses. We are trying to find ways how to become more creative, and then we already seen from producer side, but also from importer side, that they started investing much more into people who are in front of house, because they are the ones who are spreading the word. You cannot now, you know, pay let's say 1,000 euros, put your big tent somewhere in the middle of the road and promote your brand, or put it on TV. There is no possibilities. So there are only just word of mouth. And that's how, you know, they started getting us for trips, to tastings, like lots of things like that for the past couple of years. And no, I think it's good for both ways, for producers, but for sommeliers as well. And yeah, we get educated, but we spread the word.
Yeah, that's a good point of view.
Hey, I gotta suggest, I'm always about the customer. For those of you who don't know what this thing is, it's a champagne stopper. Oh. And if those of you out there, this is an essential tool for any restaurant. Martynas, you know this, right? Like, because if you're doing sparkling wine by the glass, this actually does work. It does preserve them. It's just a little clip. And at home, you know, I use this at home. So I have a glass of this. I can put it in my fridge. Costs nothing. And I'm also a big proponent of like the Vacuvon or Repour or Coravon, if you can afford Coravon. You can't Coravon sparkling wine. You got to keep one of these. And also, Nigel, just a quick question. You don't have to go in depth. I saw, you know, labeling wise, and I get this asked, labeling wise, right? Right now, it's English quality sparkling wine. From what I understand, labeling laws are going to be ratcheted up in the future. You know, estate, the brut, you know, the sugar levels, dosage levels. And do you look at that as a good thing, as being, you know, drilling down more towards the the AOP system versus kind of the more loose AVA system, or a hybrid?
I think that then personally, okay, so this is not necessarily a Boutino opinion or a Henners opinion. This is, dare I say, me as a sommelier opinion. I think there needs to be some regulation. I think there needs to be some structure. So again, going back to Martynas's original question about sort of identifying English sparkling wine, that having a structure and regulation in place will help that. So in terms of the title at the moment, quality English sparkling wine. So obviously it has to come from England. Okay, there is actually a big difference between English wine and British wine. British wine would actually imply that the grapes or the juice or the must was actually bought from another country, imported and then made in the UK. Okay. For English wine, it has to be produced in England. Same for Wales. So as a passionate Welshman, We rules in Wales. For quality, for the term quality, it has to be Vitis vinifera. So, as I mentioned before, 10, 15 years ago, the most popular variety grown in the UK was Seyval Blanc, which is a hybrid. Seyval Blanc cannot produce quality wines in terms of the EU regulation in terms of quality. I'm not saying that Seyval Blanc doesn't make very good wines, it can do, but to have that tag quality, it has to be made from pure Vitis vinifera. It could be a crossing, but it can't be a hybrid. I think what will happen in the long term, possibly, is you will start to see sort of wines labelled up from the county that they're from. So again, sort of that could be anywhere sort of in sort of the south coast, plus also sort of, you know, there are vineyards in starting to sort of pop up in sort of other places like Cheshire, Yorkshire, Lancashire, etc., etc. So that might come into force, but I think sort of where we're at the moment is right for the brand of English sparkling wine to develop, in the fact that the rules and regulations aren't strict. They are certainly, dare I say, sort of yeah, so that's my own personal opinion. And I think sort of at the end of the day, the reality is the quality's got to be there. I mentioned before, there are lots and lots of really, really good English producers now making absolutely fantastic wines. They're flying the flag for England, flying the flag for Wales as well. You know, we've got some fantastic producers in Wales that are making really good wines as well. Yeah, you know, sort of, I think sort of, we're at the start, you know. It's the first couple of episodes in this book. The older generation might say, oh, but you know, we've been making wines in the UK for 100 years, 150 years, but I think now is the real start. And this is where, keep on using this word exciting, because we're certainly excited at Henners, and I'm sure a lot of the other producers are really excited with what they're doing. You know, the fact is that we are the same temperature now in the south coast of England as Champagne was in the 1950s.
So yeah,
fact.
perfect. It's perfect.
So, you know, but we've got the investments that they didn't have in the 1950s. And we've got the know-how as well. You know, there are so many, and I'm not knocking the Champagne industry, because Champagne makes some amazing sparkling wine, but the Champenois are investing now in the south coast of England. Which me sort of says a lot, really. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask about that earlier and some climate change stuff, and you know, I can't help but to think of this kind of like Oregon, in a way. You know how the way Oregon's come up was, you know, it was determined that Pinot Noir was the grape. It was from Willamette, and Willamette's a huge area, and it took them 30 years to figure out the different, you know, the different types of soils, whether it's the Jury or the Nika or the whatever the marsh stuff. And now it's like very more site specific, but also it took domain Druin to go in there and solidify what they already, you know, what they thought they knew. The same way with sparkling wine with Roederer in Anderson Valley. Like when Roederer went into Anderson Valley in Mendocino, it was like, all right, Tattager comes into Caneros. All right. I think Pommery came to England, right? Like they have Louis Palmer or Pommery as a brand. And once that stuff starts happening, you've gained your legitimacy, right? Like that's kind of like, because the French are notorious for being very particular about whether it's Bordeaux or whether it's Burgundy or whether it's Champagne. because I experienced this a lot with working with wineries in Chile. Because I worked with Chile for 10 years, and I saw anytime a Burgundian guy would go make Pinot Noir, it was like something's up, and everyone would go flock there. Or you have Lafite and Mouton, Mouton making Almaviva, and well, something's there. But I think that's interesting, and I think you're probably not there yet, but it's gonna, in 5 years, maybe even 2 or 3 years, people are gonna be asking, where's this site? Where's the terroir?
Yes.
What is the exact spot? Where, if I go on Google Earth, can I find this? And what makes this, terroir different? Well, the border is this, there's this little ridge, and, there's no limestone over there, but we have limestone, whatever the, and that's what Martynas and I probably ask as geeks, but selling that to a customer is not, I don't sell that to a customer. I sell that to me and you as a communication and the mark of the quality. I'm just going to be like, this fizzy stuff from England's fantastic, and here's why. But I'm not going to, unless they open the can of worms. But I think you're going to be getting asked those questions. More people are studying for WSET3. I mean, I see it so everyone's studying. They want to know more. They want to know the details. On the trade side, once you get it to the customer, it's a little bit more like, hey, this is really cool stuff. England's been making some really great sparkling wines for the last 10, 15 years, and here's why you should try it. But labeling wise, we're sticklers. Where does this come from? Who's the producer? How many bottles? What's the RS level? What's brut? What's extra? And that's great. I think, and for what I understand, that's your next evolution. Aside from just keep making better wine, global warming's in your favor. I hope. It's not in everyone's favor, but I've read, that's why I knew about 18 was a warm vintage, and you got a bumper crop. And actually, you want production, right? You want more production because your acidities stay at whatever, I was reading about 10. You can keep some of the grapes at 10 TA.
Yeah, we can, yeah, as I say, and we don't do, for Henners, we don't do mellow. So we like to maintain that freshness. In 18, we did have a bumper harvest. Yields were superb in 18, and it allowed us in 18 to also make some really good still wines, some still wines for earlier consumption. I mentioned before about we've got the oak capacity now at the winery, and we're playing around, and we're sort of doing a little bit of experiments here, there, and just again, because it's all new, it's fresh. It's we don't have any strict rules. We don't have people sort of telling us what we can and can't do. And I mentioned before, the owners of Butano, that they're on board with this. They, Dennis and Michael, they want to be seen on a world stage for this particular brand.
I wanted to give a short one more question. So we are pretty clear that sparkling wines are amazing. I have also a Chardonnay in my shop from you. So how it has been doing for the last year when you released it? What's the reception of it?
It's been very good. It's almost in that, dare I say, sort of Chablis-esque style to it. It's 100% Chardonnay. There is a little fraction of oak in there just to sort of give it a little bit of fatness and roundness. But it's very, very drinkable. It's really well priced. It's it's exceptionally well priced. It's really good value. Again, it's not something that we have years and years of supply of, and we again want to see that positioned in the best places, and You know, it's not going to be in the multiple supermarkets, because we're trying to sort of create a quality brand where they're seen to be in the right places.
So do you see like a really good perspective for this still wines as cool climate region wines? Because what I really like about this Chardonnay, that it's only, if I remember well, it's only 11% of alcohol. So you can have, you know, half a bottle easily and not getting drunk. So and we've seen, at least in the media, I don't know about guests, but also I'm seeing this trend coming here that people are looking for lighter wines, lighter things to drink, and this kind of wines, especially if they are well balanced, it can be also a prospective project in the future.
Okay.
No, I think, you know, sort of that they are perfect wines to enjoy with cuisine. But again, you know, sort of there are some amazing still wines by other producers in England. You know, right across that south coast, a lot of these producers, top producers, are making really, really good still wines. And the focus at the moment is all about the sparkling. You know, and I think the focus will always be about the sparkling and the comparison to champagne. But again, for sort of for the people in the know, it's look for the still wines as well.
Okay. So a little recap of this evening. So the UK market is really finding their own voice. It's not like the champagne, it's different. We see that we have a lot of ambassadors who want to represent the UK market. And they find different ways to put them in the market, like you said, Martynas, like thinking about marketing strategies. Yeah, does anyone wants to edit something of my comments? Final notes for Nigel, or Nigel itself. Do you have some final notes as is this right now?
Well, I just want to thank you. Well, thank David, who's not on. David brought me into this via LinkedIn, and I just want to, the power of the different social media, you know, channels, and you never know where you find people. But Nigel, this was exciting to me to meet you. I haven't had a lot of opportunity to work with English wines, just because as you get specialized as a wine speaker in certain areas, and you know, you do restaurant consulting or certain writing or education, but it's skewed to different countries or regions. You know, I haven't had a lot of opportunity to taste and really focus. So this gave me an opportunity to spend a little time reading and getting up to speed, because I should be anyway with the title of the Master Sommelier. People expect us to know everything, right? FW. But the case of the matter is, you know, we put a lot of our efforts into different things. And to be back in touch, especially with a wine like this, that's just, I think this is the perfect consumer wine. Those who are ready to, those that like really good champagne, like you said, grower champagne, or definitely consider you a grower champagne. In that book, it's English grower sparkling wine, I guess you would call it, or I don't know what you categorically put yourself at, but yeah, you know, I didn't know how, I knew it was going to be good, but I didn't know how good, and the price point, 8,000 cases, your dedication, and you know, the only thing for me is I got to find it. So, you know, help me find the wine and help you a little bit and say, hey, you know, if you like sparkling wine, give this a shot. You know, Franciacorta is different, Champagne's different. Every village of Champagne's different. Every producer has a style. But yeah, I think this is you guys are off to a really good start. And
thank you very
from what
much.
I understand, you got what, 3 or 4 more vintages kind of in the ready to be blended out. And
that's right. Yeah. So yeah. We're in this fortunate position now to have more reserve wine. So as I mentioned before, sort of in 3-4 years' time, we'll have sort of a bank of reserve wines where we can create non-vintage blends with consistency that sort of, year on year, people will say, oh, that's Henners. It's a great time. It really is, and it's as I said before, it's fantastic now, but it's going to get even better.
Great.
Cool.
Oh, Nigel, before we wrap this up, can we order your wines from a web shop or a local shop?
What I would suggest is if you go on to the Boutonneau website or the Henners Vineyard website. So Henners
in the comments below.
www.hennersvineyard.co.uk, or the Boutonneau website is www.boutonneau.com. We do have on there sort of inquiry where you can ping in an email, and we do have people that will sort of point you in the right direction.
Thanks, Nigel.
We do
Nigel.
around the world, yes.
Yeah, great. Nigel, I want to thank you for presenting Henners wine. And I want to thank Fred and Martynas for the insights.
Thank you.
Next week, we have our last Vinarchy in the UK for this month. Next week, we have Alice Lane from Leenberg Wine. And our host, Kelvin Guest, will host the party, along with Oliver Leah and Francesco Marzola. We're going to taste the Maximilian 2019. So be sure to won't miss the last show. For now, I'm going to stop the recording and the live. And cheers, guys.
Stay safe. Thank you very much, all. Thank you.
A glass of bubbles a day keeps the psychiatrist away. Just remember that. Thanks, Nigel. Thanks, Zelda.
Bye-bye.
Nice to meet you, Martynas.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.